Why is honesty such a rarity? Let's explore. Diogenes, the Greek philosopher, used to walk around Athens holding a lamp in his hand, and that too in broad daylight. And people used to wonder, Athenians used to wonder, what is wrong with him? Why is he walking in broad daylight with a lamp in his hand? And when people asked him, what are you doing? Can't you see it's broad sunlight? Why a broad daylight? Why are you using lamp? And he very sarcastically used to reply that he's walking with a lamp in his hand because he's trying to look for an honest man. Now what Diogenes was trying to convey there was that finding an honest person in Athens was a rarity. Have you thought about this question? Why finding an honest person is such a rarity? Oh, I remember my own situation. In campuses, in university, when I used to teach courses, I used to give out assignments. And when assignments were turned in, I could see most of the assignments were either plagiarized or copied with friends. Very few of the assignments were honest assignments. Seriously, it is a rarity to find an honest person. Have you thought about this question? Why dishonesty is so common? Why is it we don't mind cutting corners here and there? Why the virtue of honesty is such a rarity nowadays? And today we'll explore this question, the question of virtue of honesty. In today's episode, I'll be discussing 3 questions. 1. What does honesty mean? What behaviors are incompatible with honesty? That's the first question. Second, I'm going to talk about the relevance of honesty as a public service virtue. That is, how relevant honesty is for civil servants and professionals. Third, I'm going to talk about something called professional honesty vis-a-vis intellectual honesty. And there's an interesting case study coming at the end. Let me start by explaining what does the word honesty mean. Now, all over the world, in most cultures, honesty has come to symbolize 3 words. Do not lie. But no, honesty is not as simple as that. Honesty is much more than this. Honesty is a character quality. I repeat, I'm going to talk about honesty from virtue perspective. So honesty is a character quality. It's a quality that motivates you to act honestly. Let me explain this further. Imagine there's a person called Ashok, and someone comes and tells you that Ashok did an honest thing by telling the truth in the courtroom. That person is giving you an assessment of Ashok's behavior as honest. Fine, Ashok was honest in the courtroom, but that does not mean that Ashok is an honest person. What I'm trying to say is, Ashok was honest in the courtroom testimony, but there's a possibility in real life Ashok is not an honest person. He was honest in the courtroom. Why? Because of fear. He knew very well, Ashok knew very well that he'll be punished, or there'll be severe repercussions if he lied. So Ashok was not honest because he values honesty. Ashok was honest out of fear. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, honesty is a character quality. If someone values honesty and his behavior is non-deceptive always, that is what his honesty is all about. Let me simplify it for you. The best way to understand honesty is to understand behaviors that is incompatible with honesty. Lying, which is commonly called deception. Misleading. You can mislead somebody by withholding information, by giving them half-truths. Stealing. Stealing is also dishonest. You know that? When you steal, that means you're taking things that does not belong to you. Cheating, violating rules, not indulging in fair play, that's cheating. Promise breaking, that is not keeping the word. Promises are binding. It imposes a moral obligation, but whenever you break a promise, you are being dishonest to the other person. The other behaviors which are incompatible with honesty is, the most common one among students, plagiarism. Next, bluffing. You misrepresent your own knowledge to others. Last one, self-deceivers. That is, you misrepresent the truth to your own self. These are other small dishonest behaviors. Now, we just looked at behaviors that is incompatible with honesty. So what exactly is honesty is all about? And since I'm talking about honesty as a virtue, the meaning of the word virtue is excellence. So that means an honest person or a person who acts with honesty displays the following excellences. Truthfulness. The second excellence is being respectful of others' property. Third excellence is proper compliance to rules. Fourth excellence, fidelity to promises. And the last one, being forthright. Now, being forthright is a very important virtue for professionals and civil servants, even in our personal lives also. If we can recall the behaviors that is incompatible with honesty and the excellences we just listed, if you look at both, what you can conclude is an honest person is a person who respects truth, who understands the value of being honest. Now, a question I have for all of you to think about. The question is, can you spot an honest person? It's difficult, right? If you have to spot an honest person, you should know what behaviors reflect a person's honesty. What are the behaviors? Let me talk about these behaviors. The first thing, if you notice, the first most important behavior is an honest person will refrain from lying or refrain from deceiving on important moral matters. For example, an honest person will not lie in resume. You know, resume, we have a habit of faking in resumes, which we call padding up the resumes. We write things in resumes which I've never done. Why are you doing it? Just imagine you're trying to get a job, interview on the basis of deception. Where is your honesty? The next behavior an honest person will exhibit is they will not indulge in everyday lies. For example, a small matter. You reached your classroom late for whatever reasons it may be. Why can't you be honest and tell me that you got up late? But no, you'll have a tendency to blame the bus. Oh, some of you will blame the weather also. You'll have wonderful lies to narrate. Why are you doing it? Simple thing. Please refrain from stupid everyday lies. Because when you start doing it, it becomes a habit. What are you doing by giving those everyday lies is you're eroding your own honesty. Next important behavior, an honest person will refrain from lying to hurt other person. You know, sometimes we just lie to hurt the other person. We spread rumors about somebody else. We gossip about somebody else. Don't do that. The best way to spot a dishonest person is this. When a dishonest person lies, they will have no sign of distress on their faces. They will have no sign of remorse or guilt. Whereas if an honest person lies, you can catch them very easily because they'll have a sign of distress. But let's come down to the next core very important area. The relevance of honesty as a virtue for a civil servant. The relevance of honesty for a professional. For a civil servant or for a professional, the most important way to exhibit honesty is to be truthful. In other words, when I say truthful, it's about not distorting information. A public servant or professional is relied upon to give the exact facts, not distorted facts. Being honest is all about not distorting information. Let me give an example from civil service perspective. Imagine there's a young IAS officer, and while serving a certain district, he introduces a very good educational scheme. And the scheme is very well responded to. It's doing well. And the scheme has a lot of beneficiaries. And it so happens, in the middle of the whole thing, he's transferred to a different district. In his place, some other officer comes in. And by this time, the scheme is doing so well that the CM of the state announces an award for the scheme. Now the actual initiator of the scheme, the brainchild, has moved to a different district. A new person is there. Now the question is, when the new person goes to receive the award, a big question arises. Should he take the credit for himself because he's the man in power at that moment? Or should he be honest and give credit to his predecessor? What should he do? I'm sure an honest person will give credit to his predecessor. The next important honest quality a civil servant needs to exhibit is forthrightness. When I say forthrightness, that means civil servants should be honest in giving their advice. They should not give misleading advices. The next important behavior that contributes to a civil servant's honesty is respecting public property. Civil servants are expected not to abuse public property for personal gain. So, the most important aspect of honest behavior is keep up your commitments, fulfill your promises. If you have given a word, fulfill it. And the last and the most remarkable component of honest behavior is being rule compliant, following the rules, proper compliance of rules. So these are the common behaviors by which a civil servant can exhibit honesty. Oh, we have been talking about honesty. How about this word intellectual honesty? A professional, a public servant is expected to be intellectually honest. So what does that mean? Scholars define intellectual honesty as a disposition to express the truth through thought, speech, and behavior, and to avoid intentionally distorting truth, and to do so because we revere the truth and think it's valuable. In simple words, an intellectually honest civil servant is a person who has a healthy respect for truth, one, and two, most importantly, they understand the impact of distortion of truth on governance. At the very mention of intellectual honesty, one IAS officer comes to my mind, and the gentleman happens to be former Union Home Secretary, and that's Mr. Madhav Godbole. Whenever he used to have constant run-ins with politicians, and during those run-ins, during those times, whenever he had a run with a politician, he always had a very high moral ground. And he was so known for his intellectual honesty that a journalist wrote this about him. He was not just an honest officer. He was more than conscious about his honesty. He would almost wear his honesty on his sleeve. If you are a professional, what would you give importance to? Your professional honesty or intellectual honesty? Think about it. And I'll give you a small case also to think about it. Let me take you to New York, 1973. 4 young college kids had gone camping. And when they were camping, they were attacked by Robert Garrow. And in that attack, 1 boy was killed and 3 were able to escape. After 12 days of manhunt, Robert Garrow was arrested. After the arrest, Robert Garrow had to be presented in the court. And to represent Garrow, Garrow requested for Armani. Armani was his lawyer. And in fact, Armani had represented earlier also in other cases where Garrow was involved. And the local court also appointed 1 more counsel to defend Garrow. And that co-counsel's name was Frank Welch. So in other words, Garrow had 2 lawyers helping him out. They were the counsels, defense counsels. And during the pre-trial, Garrow confessed to these 2 lawyers about killing one of the campers. At the same time, he also confessed to killing some other girls. And these girls were abducted, raped, and killed by Garrow. And Garrow, in fact, told these lawyers the exact spot where he committed the crime and where he buried the bodies also. And meanwhile, the lawyers had the information. Meanwhile, the police around were looking for these 2 girls, and the police were treating the whole case involving the girls as lost case, as missing persons case. Police had no clue that the girls were killed, buried. Lawyers had the information. And lawyers, being professionally honest, did not share the information with the police. Because lawyers believed in client confidentiality. They kept things confidential. And when Garrow went on trial, he confessed to killing one of the campers. He also confessed to other killings. And it so happens that once he confessed, the lawyers also came out publicly and said they knew about the girl's killing because Garrow had confessed to them earlier. Now, once lawyers made this statement public, there was a huge outcry among people. How come when you knew the information about other crimes committed by Garrow, how come you never revealed to the police? Now, this is where one of the biggest dilemmas came up. The lawyers were professionally honest, client confidentiality. But lawyers' intellectual honesty was questionable. Now, I leave the question to you guys. What the lawyers did, was it right or wrong? And I'll conclude this session by quoting Aristotle. According to Aristotle, an honest person is someone who's truthful both in what he says and in how he lives, simply because that is his state of character. Happy learning. See you soon.